Welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies.
Yeah.
I'm Jose.
I'm Mike.
And we've just come back from seeing The Commuter, which is a low budget film directed by, I think it's Jaume Collet-Serra, Catalan director, who's made a career out of doing these low budget action and horror films. This is his third outing with Liam Neeson.
My first thought is, why does Liam Neeson keep doing these films?
Because they're very successful. And actually, these are the types of films that have made him a star. And I like them.
But why doesn't he do proper acting anymore?
Well, I don't know that he doesn't.
This is all anyone knows him for. It's basically, for 10 years he's been doing Taken and versions of Taken.
Yeah, well, these are his hits.
Yeah, but this is like all anyone sort of...
No, he's done very good
I find
work.
him so unbelievable when he shows up as...
Oh, no, I love him.
A normal man living in America.
I love the way he's used in this film, and actually I love all of those films. And some of them have been kind of masterpieces, actually. There's one... what is it called? The Fox or something like that? Or the Wolves? He goes up north in the snow and he's got this job, and then he ends up kind of fighting wolves in order to survive. I thought that was like a fantastic, fantastic film.
Right.
So I disagree with you. I think, this is where he's found his niche. He was an actor who was kind of a leading man, really not going anywhere for really about 20 years. I mean... Steven Spielberg's what's the name of the film, the Holocaust film, Schindler's List was his first starring kind of role where he's the center of everything and he's got a part he can sink his teeth into. Before that he was kind of leading man to probably every female star in Hollywood, really. And incredibly handsome, but never quite hit. So actually, these are the films that have made him a star.
I know that. It's no mystery why he keeps doing them, but I'm getting a bit tired of them, that's all.
Oh, I like them. Yeah, I never get tired of them.
I still find it a kind of... I still think it's kind of a square peg in a round hole. I've never quite believed him. Even though people love him.
I love him.
I've never quite believed him in them. Not in a way that like a Tom Cruise or Bruce Willis fits them.
I love him, and I think he's braver and more daring than somebody like Tom Cruise. I mean, if you look at... I saw Tom Cruise and Graham Norton, and his whole face is inflated. He's becoming like, a male Cher or something. He's had so much Botox and work done, and, he's got this shiny, inflated skin like a housewife of Beverly Hills.
Does his own stunts, though. Broke his ankle. He does my stunts as well.
Yeah, well, he's welcome to walk for me if he wants to. Anyway, but the thing is, there's a close-up on this, where his face comes into focus on the camera, and you see that he's a 60-odd-year-old man. You see every line, every little bit of liver spot.
He says the line of dialogue, "I'm a 60-year-old man." It's when he loses his job. And he's right up close to the camera, and it's a kind of wide-angle shot, and it distorts him, and it looks weird. But then at the same time, you can tell he's sort of got loads of makeup on as well. Like, he's like a 60-year-old man who's got movie makeup on. It's weird to look at.
Well, I didn't notice that, I must say.
I sort of thought that.
And so, I find it interesting that he's continuing to do these roles. They're less kind of demanding of his body than they used to be. But there's still quite a few action scenes. But anyway, I don't care. That's not what attracts me to these movies. What attracts me to them is the really lithe films. They're really kind of slimmed down. It's all kind of bare bones character action. And I think the balance in this is very good, actually.
So I'll just say what it's kind of about. And spoilers will be coming up. So Liam Neeson is this insurance guy who used to be a cop, but he's doing insurance now, and he's just about kind of making money, living paycheck to paycheck with his wife and kids, and then he gets laid off. And on his train trip home, he commutes every day, hence the title. And on his train trip home, he is offered some money by a mysterious woman played by Vera Farmiga, who says, if you do something small that will affect someone else's life a lot, you don't know what it is, and we give you $100,000, will you do it? And so he ends up doing it. He slightly gets sucked into it, but he takes the money. So he's made his choice. It turns out that the thing that he has to do is identify someone on this train who has a bag and who doesn't belong there, and put a tracker on this bag for some bad guys to then,
Kill.
Well, kill, yes. Blah, 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 things develop, and then obviously revelations come out, and because it's mysterious, and it's a lovely little kind of. It's a lovely little hook, like I was in, you know. I wanted to know what was going on. It's one of these films that, rather like Phone Booth or something, it sets up a weird question.
Yes.
And then you want it to be answered.
It's a smart premise for a thriller, really. And I loved all of the beginning. So the film begins with like these quick cuts of, the repetitive thing of a man waking up with his wife, who is Elizabeth McGovern, and being teaching helping his child do his literature reading, or reading it along with him, and being driven to the commuter train. And this happens so you get a very, very quick impression through kind of this really beautifully edited kind of quick sequence that this is the daily routine, and this is a happy life, and it's a loving family, and so on. But you get a sense of like time passing, that this is the routine, and this is the life, and it's kind of dull, but it's kind of nice. And and I thought there was more cinematic savvy in that sequence than in all of the film that we saw yesterday. Downsizing. So
still not recovered from that. I haven't been to sleep since I saw that.
Yes.
But I mean, that is because I work nights. It's not because it kept me up going, oh my God, how do I cope?
Though knowing you, it probably did as well.
But I can tell you that because I was so tired then when it came to watching this, because I had no sleep, that if we'd seen Downsizing today instead of The Commuter, I would have fallen asleep.
Yes.
I can guarantee that. Whereas this, kept me awake. Apart from one scene where I slightly nodded off.
Yeah, it's not a perfect film, so it slacks off at the end, and there's too much... There's too much time devoted to tightening up all of the loose ends at the end, right? Which kind of swells up the film unnecessarily. But almost until then, it's a really tight, taut thriller with just kind of some really wonderful cinematic flourishes. I mean, there's the one shot which begins on one side of the train, right? And then kind of moves through all of the different carriages through glass, as if, the camera's just moving through the glass. I thought that was wonderful.
And there's a fight as well between Liam Neeson and, I think... a guy who he thinks is the target, which all is edited and filmed to look as if it's taken place in one take.
Yes.
And that kind of, it moves around the carriage, and they end up going outside the window and back in again. And that's quite stylish, and you can tell that how it's been fudged, or how it's been kind of put together in some ways, but nonetheless, it's quite impressive.
Yeah, and there's a scene where he arrives at the train station, and you get the sense of like, all of these commuters rushing into the train, and then kind of they
fade around him.
Fade around him, and he ends up alone, and you do get the sense of like, kind of some of the existential dilemmas that these Liam Neeson thrillers kind of, it's their meat and potatoes, these existential questions. So I like it very much.
I did spend a lot of time thinking, how long is it going to be before he starts crushing heads, to be honest. And actually, he doesn't really crush heads, which disappointed me slightly. I was expecting something slightly different. But that's just what the film is. I just wish he crushed a few heads. What can I say?
Well, I do think that this is where his age is beginning to show, and I didn't expect that, actually. I did kind of wonder how they were going to limit, some of those action scenes, because he is getting on a bit. And the film makes a point of him getting on a bit. And actually, he gets beaten up. The first instance, he loses the fight, which, I don't remember that happening to him before, though I'm sure it might.
Well, to be fair, in Taken 2, he is the one who's captured, he and his wife.
Yes, okay, there you go.
So there's always an element of kind of making him the underdog to bring him back up. If he's on top the whole way through, then that's boring.
I love him. I love his voice. He's got this very deep kind of voice that's just full of sadness and melancholy. Even when he's trying to be cheery, there's a kind of a sadness that just the tone of his voice evokes, and that is very well suited to these films. I also thought it was an achievement of this film, not only to make the film so taut, where kind of you see how all the pieces fit, but also you do get a sense of all of the characters that inhabit the railway carriages, right? So it's not all about Liam Neeson. He's clearly the star and the protagonist, and everything revolves around him. But actually, what revolves around him are also people who are given a story and a backstory and who interacts with. And actually, the playing of all of those supporting roles is very, very good.
Yes, I really enjoyed. It's basically an early sequence where he's getting on the train and trying to find somewhere to sit. It's crowded as hell afterwards. It's when he's just lost his job, so things are a bit hectic.
Yes.
And he gets on the train, and he's kind of mentally slightly dispossessed, and everything around him slightly becomes heightened, and so and the camera focuses on a couple having an argument or a woman reading the paper or this and that, and you really get a very rich sense of the life on the train and the different types of people.
Yes, and I also think it's much more socially relevant than a film like Downsizing. So, the focus is on the action and on the thrills, but nonetheless, kind of the picture of the world that is depicted for us is one of precarity. It's one where people lose their jobs. It's one where there is no justice. The kind of the banks rule everything, and kind of, bankers dismiss other people by the shoes they wear, and big business kills people, and everyone is under surveillance. Yeah, and kind
people can be bought, and everyone has a boss.
Yeah,
and the overlords who...
and people lose their jobs with regularity, and kind of their economic insecurity, and their savings and their pensions are wiped out.
The central MacGuffin, which is this girl has something in a bag. It's something to do with there's a massive corporation or kind of cabal of people who are very powerful who want this thing stopped because it would expose something, and it's very general. It's never said, it's a petroleum thing or it's a whatever. But it's just this sense of it's money at work.
Yeah,
and that's very believable. Although there is that one. There's that one line where it is slightly overdone, where there's a character on the train who's like a stockbroker who's high powered and he's showing off about his suit, and he's getting annoyed at being around all these grubby people who get the train. And it turns out that he used to work for Goldman Sachs.
Yes.
After having an argument with Liam Neeson, and Liam Neeson sort of pops back into frame and says, "From the middle classes of America, fuck you."
I like that.
Yeah, that
tries for those Schwarzenegger 1980s quips, doesn't it?
A little bit. That seemed to me like it was like trying to get the audience to cheer, like, yes, we're in the middle class of America. Liam Neeson is one of us.
Yes,
which he's not really. Because he's Liam Neeson.
Yeah, but anyway, I thought the film does all kinds of interesting things with all of that, actually, and is much, like I said, is much more of a critique and much more of a consistent critique, than kind of what we saw in Downsizing. The only things that I had not problems with, no, actually, I don't have problems with it. I was going to say, kind of the women, but actually, there's lots of women. There are lots of different kinds of women in the film. From nurses to his wife and actually, the mastermind of the whole crime ends up, spoilers, being Vera Farmiga, right? Representing... Well,
yeah, I mean, she's there right at the start. Like, she's bad news from the start, to be fair.
Yeah, but I'm just saying she's very good.
And also the person who is whistleblowing is a 16-year-old girl.
Yes. And Vera Farmiga is very good, and she gets a real star entrance. You see a flash of her. And then you see a flash of her shoes, black and white shoes, very striking.
Yeah, no, that's the first thing, is her shoes.
Yeah.
And then it's her just behind a door, and then she disappears. And
so she gets a real entrance.
It's a bit Hitchcocky.
Yeah, it's very well done. And actually, as a formal exercise, I mean, here's a film that kind of 90% of it takes place on a train.
Yeah, with high concept.
Yeah, so I liked it, really. It's, It's not one of the great masterpieces of the cinema. It's not even the best B-thriller, but I found it very good.
I think it was pretty good. I'm not quite as effusive as you are. I wasn't quite as taken with it, but there were things I liked, for instance, how much of a detective story it was early on. So the task that Liam Neeson is given is find this one person on the train who stands out, and they have a bag, and then you have to tag them. It's like, and if you do that, you get this money. So it's this weird kind of like single task he has to do from just a standing start, and then that's when that shot happens of going down the train and you're seeing all the carriages and all the possibility of who this person could be, and for like 15, 20 minutes or more, it's like Murder on the Orient Express.
Yes,
right.
I like that.
It really is. Although it's more like a bag on Pelham 1, 2, 3.
I mean, for me, there were certain things that didn't kind of sit right. So on the one hand, like these forces of evil are kind of unknown. Like, they're the financial services or banks, but they're never named. So kind of. Then the other thing is that the police is corrupt. He's betrayed by his very best friend. So really, the film has this thesis that the only people that you can count on is yourself and your family, really. But on the other hand, it has this Spartacus moment at the end, where the gunman says, "Who is Prin?" And Prin says, "I am Prin," and then everybody goes, "I am Prin, I am Prin." I go, "Oh, come on!" Like, we know you've seen Spartacus. Fuck off.
I thought the same thing, but then, I thought actually before that happened, I knew it was going to happen, and I thought, don't do Spartacus. But then it happened, and I was all right with it.
Right.
And I also like that they undercut it because the one character, one of the guys who works on the train, who's a total coward, goes, "I'm not Prin. Can I just?" And that was quite a funny little bit. He's all right.
Well, that was so expected.
Of course it was, but I still didn't mind because the thing was Spartacus was expected.
Yeah.
So undercutting it was expected too, but I'm glad they did it.
Yeah.
Just to sort of not quite otherwise it would be selling it as like this really full on emotional sort of everyone coming together moment. And I'm glad that they were aware enough to not quite go that far.
Yeah. Okay.
I was alright with it, but I think it's not as good as things like the train stuff. There's a whole thing about the train can't slow down, which is not as good as Unstoppable, the Tony Scott film. And I think that just the general kind of high concept sort of weird thing happening and you're stuck in one place pales in comparison to Phone Booth, which I think is like the high watermark for me. Although maybe that's because I saw that when I was 15, but nonetheless, like I love that movie. Because it really is. I mean, Liam Neeson has got 5 carriages to play with here. Colin Farrell had a phone booth.
Yes.
That was pretty awesome.
The only other thing I'd like to point out is, I just thought it interesting because the film begins, so it has this routine of him waking up at 6 a.m. every morning to the radio, and of course right by his bed is Thafon's book, Shadow of the Wind. And I thought, I wonder how much, the kind of the Catalan angle is going to be played, and then you realize, it's New York.
Yeah. And also there's a dramatic line, or a line that attempts to be dramatic, like a kind of a twist at one point where he's managed to get all of the remaining sort of suspects into one carriage, and then he's zoning in on one guy who he's sure is the target. And he's looking for someone who doesn't normally get on the train because it's someone who is out of place. And he's like, it's you. It's definitely you. And after a lot of this, he then notices that his ticket is, he goes, "This is a monthly ticket," which means he gets on all the time. It's like, that is supposed to be a dramatic twist. This is a monthly ticket.
I thought the narrative structure was very good because, I think for the first half of the film, or the first, close to 2/3, he's looking for the person, right? And then the last bit, he's actually kind of trying to protect the person, So I thought kind of it was a very simple, neat kind of structure, but like very beautifully done.
Yeah, like the way the story evolves quite organically, because I think at the start, I guess I was kind of expecting, the search for this person is going to be the whole film, and then at the end he'll find them. That'll be the climax. But of course, he doesn't find them, but he starts identifying suspects incorrectly early on, and then as a consequence of that, people die.
Yes.
And then the story changes, and he realizes what the danger is. So so as you say, then it becomes about protecting people, about fighting the people who are doing this to him, about making sure his family's okay, and it all gets quite fraught.
It becomes a moral question, because you see, initially it was like to take this money to find this person, but actually what the film then shows you is that to find this person is to have this person killed, right? So it's almost like kind of the moral stakes in each of the questions as the film unfolds alter and become deeper, you know. So I like that aspect of the film as well. It has kind of, you know, it has a kind of a moral stance on what it's showing, which actually is not very usual in films of this type.
Actually, thinking about it, because right at the start, the film is framing everything as a question of money. It's about how is he going to live now that he's lost his job, and this thing is a lifeline. It's $100,000 that will help him out considerably. And then, as you say, you kind of you learn that finding this person means they die, and so the money becomes less important. And then he loses the money because his bag gets caught and it ends up going off into the wind.
But he only loses part of the money.
Yeah, he only loses 25 grand because he'll get the other 75 grand later, theoretically. Nonetheless, he loses that big amount of money that's in his bag. So, and actually, the film kind of doesn't make any big deal about it. It's like the money is forgotten about by the end of the film. By the conclusion, there's no question of what happened to that money or what's going to happen. The money was completely forgotten, and it was all about protecting the people.
Well, the question is really, what price would you put on to kill an innocent person? Really. You know, what are you willing? What's your
I don't
price?
think that is the question. That's the thing. Because the film never frames it that way.
Well, it does, because at the end, you know, he puts his family at risk in order not to kill. So actually, he's the person who just will not kill.
Okay, but I thought you meant in terms of monetary value, because we were talking about the money.
Well,
like,
no.
it never frames it in that sense. Once the woman's life is in the frame, or once a human life is in the frame, the money is basically immediately forgotten.
Yeah, okay, so the thing that might be confusing it here is the question of price, or the word price.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, he's not willing to kill this innocent person, even if it means that his family might be killed. Right? So kind of, you know, so I'm saying that's the price of him not killing this person, might be that his own family gets killed, and yet he's still unwilling to kill.
Yeah.
Okay. Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, actually, I mean, if you think about it, that is a fucking dumb decision. Like, you found even just from an actuarial standpoint, your family is 3 people, and this person is 1. Do the maths.
I see kind of moral judgments don't carry much weight with you.
That is a moral judgment.
No, it's not. That's an economic kind of assessment of, you know, kind of what's the price of a life.
Yeah, 3 is better than 1.
So you would kill 1 person to save 3.
I mean, if I had no other choice.
Well, but you don't know that.
Because Liam Neeson gets lucky. He sticks it out, and eventually it turns out
his
all
family
right.
doesn't get killed.
The reason it turns out all right, because actually I think the reason that Liam Neeson sticks it out, waiting for a bit of luck, is because he knows that he's in an action film and it will happen. And actually, if it was real life, Liam Neeson would not behave like that.
All right, let's end it here. It's a really good movie. I really highly recommend it as a genre B picture. It's kind of, you know, if you don't have massive expectations for it, it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I don't highly recommend it, but it's all right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, see Phone Booth first. Great.
Don't bother with Phone Booth. See,
Phone Booth is great. We'll see Unstoppable, because that's another great film.
Just see this one.
Well, just see Unstoppable, because that's a really great, another working class kind of blue collar America thing, and it's got great train stuff, better train stuff than this. I mean, the chase stuff.
All right, we are on Twitter, Facebook, iCloud.
Are we on iCloud? We're on Twitter. Let me do it.
Okay.
We're on Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and we're on Facebook, Eavesdropping at the Movies, eavesdropping at the movies at gmail.com if you want to email us. all sorts. We've had no comments worth reading out today.
No, we haven't, though we welcome them, and we've been receiving both really nice and really helpful ones. So please do get in touch if you want to.
And you wanted to apologise for forgetting about Nebraska.
Oh, no, I don't want to apologise, but it's just, kind of after we had our podcast yesterday.
On downsizing.
Yeah, on downsizing, I realised that he'd been the director of Nebraska.
Which we forgot about. And, and it was just interesting that he's someone who is associated with something like Sideways and really not, Nebraska. When you think of Nebraska, you think of Bruce Dern and you think of black and white and you think of that landscape, So anyway, I just kind of wish we'd made more of a connection kind of yesterday. But because our policy is really to not research, to try to avoid information as much as possible before seeing the film, and then, to come and base our conversation on the film we just saw rather than on everything that surrounds the film. It's just one of those things that escaped. Yeah. I mean, that was something that happened with The Snowman, because I think if we'd known with The Snowman about its production problems, we would have evaluated it quite differently. Yeah. Because I think actually we both ended up saying we kind of like The Snowman, but it's a bit off how the story doesn't really make sense. And everyone else I've seen talking about The Snowman was saying this is terrible and they've ruined it and the production problems had all this impact and blah blah blah. And I think actually if other people had seen it the way we saw it, they might have liked it a bit more.
Yes, the wonderful film that I was thinking about with Liam Neeson that I think is just wonderful is The Grey. It's called The Grey.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it.
And that I highly recommend.
We have very little time.
Okay.
That's my Liam Neeson.
All right, let's wrap it up here.
Yeah, bye-bye. Goodbye.
That is so unlike me, Liam Neeson.
I will find you and I will kill you. That was all right.
Well, it's deep. That doesn't sound like Liam Neeson.
Answers on a postcard.